we only got approved to get on the flight 30 minutes before boarding. Once we landed in Johannesburg, there was just nowhere for us to go. You know, I haven't been home for a winter in like 14 years. When we were in Hawaii and we got onto the repatriation flight, we weren't allowed to bring any sporting equipment home with us. That basically left us with no equipment at home, but what that actually did was it gave me the opportunity to go and work really closely with my dad again and kind of just build our brand and our relationship on a professional level. That was really something that I feel like now, looking back at it, just everything happens for a reason, and that was definitely a good one. The curfews and everything started to ease up, and surfing is allowed again, and a lot more people started to kind of venture outside of their states and get back to what they know. I thought it would be a really cool time for us to go and spend some time in JBay. It's such a cool, cruisy town. I just thought it would be a great place for, not only for me to be able to surf, but for Lyndall to be able to have that relaxed mindset while she's pregnant during such a crazy time. We ended up getting a few really, really good swells. Yeah, I think as South African people, I think the culture is definitely raised on making lemonade out of lemons. So when everything kind of went pear, just kind of saw everybody pick up whatever they do best and whatever they're passionate about and do it with a smile on their face and just keep going.
Hi, my name is Olivier Champenois and I'm the lead race engineer of the Tiger Porsche Formula E team. Today I'm going to talk about the chassis and the bodywork of a 99X electric. Compared to other race series, there are quite a few specificities in Formula E. First, the monocoque that you see there includes the survival cell for the driver, but also some space for the battery. So that's quite specific. So on top of that, the wheels are more covered than other race series, which reduces drag in general. Another specificity is that there is no rear wing, and the majority of the rear downforce is produced by the rear diffuser. This solution gives a very good aerodynamic efficiency, producing less drag. All bodywork and chassis parts are actually specific to Formula E and are supplied by the FIA designated manufacturer. Well, generally the racing on city track is not very different to other type of racing. The main specificity is that the bodywork and chassis is made strong enough for various reasons. So first, on city tracks there are some places where there are elevation changes, compressions and jumps, like in Rome, where the chassis has to be very strong. Also the drivers in Formula E typically take these concrete curbs very aggressively and try and gain time doing so. And then finally, Formula E races involve close contacts, so contact with competitors, but also with the walls on city tracks, meaning the bodywork has to sustain these contacts. The chassis, the monocoque in itself, and all structural elements of the Formula E car have to follow technical regulations that are quite strict and which involve passing static and dynamic tests. Another type of regulation to follow is the fact that the minimum thickness of the skid block at the end of the race has still to be 3 mm. So the chassis in itself, the monocoque, is just one part that you see there. But in total, all the structural elements, including all screws and small fixtures, represent around 1,500 parts on the Formula E car. Typically, as with most modern race cars, the chassis and the bodywork is made of carbon composite. So it's a material that is used for its high rigidity to weight ratio. The monocoque itself that you see there weighs around 90 kilo. As a reference, the total car weight is 903 kilo in Formula E, including driver, and the battery itself weighs 400 kilo. Then we also make a difference between the structural parts and the non-structural parts in general, like pure bodywork parts. So besides the monocoque, the chassis that you see there, there are also some important structural elements that connect to it. First is obviously the front nose that comes here. The front suspension connects here with the steering system. Then under the monocoque there's the floor with the skid block attached to it, and then finally at the back the rear crush or the rear structure, which we also call gearbox carrier. Then comes the engine cover or rear cover, and finally all the elements that come underneath, which starting from the back with the diffuser, the floor and the skid block that connects into it. Then we also add some ballast that we typically put at the front and at the rear on the chassis to make sure that the weight of the car matches the regulations. So starting from the monocoque, the bare monocoque that you see there, it takes around 2 days for us to fit all our lines and looms into it and get it ready for an assembly into a full car. Then at the racetrack, when we need to change chassis, we actually have a spare chassis ready to go, and it's just a question of assembling a powertrain into it and getting it ready in 1 hour or 2. So in general, the regulations are very strict on what we can change on bodywork. There are only a few little things we can do. The first thing is the livery. It's free. Then there are some possibilities to adjust the bodywork parts that are not structural within a range of 50 millimeters. And then finally, we can tape any hole in the bodywork, and typically we do that for aerodynamic efficiency. In Formula E, all chassis and bodywork parts are provided by the FIA designated manufacturer. So it means Porsche only manufactures a very limited amount of parts itself, and this involves the rear casing, so the rear structure that holds the rear suspension and that incorporates the gearbox and the powertrain. The most important parts of our Formula E car in terms of aerodynamics are the following. First, there is the front wing, which incorporates the front wing flaps. There's the rear diffuser. These are the main elements producing downforce. There are also some important elements like the underfloor, the keel, the skid blocks and the front fenders. And that's it. In terms of safety in case of a crash, there are some important elements. The most obvious one is the halo on top of the monocoque that protects the driver's head. There's also the roll hoop that is there to also protect the driver. Then for the front impact, there's the nose with the front crash structure. There are some side cones that you can't see, which also protect the drivers from a crash from the side. And then finally, the rear crash structure that comes here and that also protects the driver from a crash from the back.
.722 is over in England since June for the memorial of Sir Stirling Moss. And today we try to fire up the engine, did some laps here to check if everything works, and we're happy so far.
We're at the Royal Naval College in Greenwich because basically it's like a sort of stunt double for the centre of London. It's where people like Bond and such like come and film, so that they've got somewhere that looks like Whitehall but is all closed roads. This is where the camera guys have the time to sort of indulge themselves a little bit and get all those details.
The car looks great from every angle, and we're really looking forward to someday where we're going to be actually taking this out on the streets of London. The 722, Sterling Moss's car, back to his house. It's going to be something really special.
It's a once-in-a-lifetime event today to get 722, the car that Sterling Moss made so famous on the 1st of May 1955, back home here in London, where Sir Sterling spent pretty much his entire adult life. It's truly magical. We've had a helicopter up in the sky, we've had people along the entire route through Westminster, and then coming back to Mayfair here. The car was filmed car to car with a tracking vehicle, and cameras inside the car as well, just to capture everything once. We had one chance to do this.
Sterling Moss winning the Mille Miglia in 1955 in that car is one of the great feats in the history of motor racing. It was that car which kind of put Sterling Moss on the map. They used to call him the Boy Wonder, and he kind of became Mr. Motor Racing after that. The car today is being driven by Gert Straub. Nobody knows those cars better than Gert. They're kind of his family. He is, I think, the 4th generation of his family to work at Mercedes-Benz. The 5th and the 6th are already there. He's retiring today, so this is kind of like the last thing he's going to do. And what a way to sign off a career. There really couldn't be anybody better or more appropriate to be driving that car today.
At the beginning I was a little bit nervous because there's always a pressure on the driver, but now after we are finished, it's a fantastic feeling. It's a race car designed to be on a racetrack full speed and not designed for stop and go traffic in town. But the police did a perfect job. They guided me through town, and it was comfortable for me. Going over the bridges was a special moment, seeing Big Ben left to me. But I was always fully concentrated on the car.
Lady Moss has been tremendously welcoming here at her home in Shepherd Street, and also their son Elliot, who we'll see in the film as well. Without their support and active engagement, none of this would have been possible.
Throughout my entire life, that race, this car, of all the cars he drove, and there are a lot, and this just meant more than anything else. I mean, it's literally etched onto the building on his balconies. My personal memory of it is from 2015, which was the 60th anniversary in Braysher, and I think the last time I ever did a public thing with him. And that was the first time I ever sat in the driver's seat and had an idea of how difficult it would have actually been.
There's something for everyone in this film, whether you're a lifelong fan like me or you're new to the story of the Mille Miglia and Sir Sterling Moss. And we hope that people will spot some of the things that have happened deliberately and some of them by happy accident throughout the film. And I think it's only fitting that 722 moves to a new phase of its life, and we'll be taking her back to the museum in Stuttgart, where millions of people a year will get to see her up close and in person. And of course, for all of the rest of us, there's always this fabulous film.
thinking I don't feel alright. Screw loose in my head, I feel so dead until I get it right. You know we coming for it, oh, we gon' see the light. Until then, I'm just in the night. Looking at the sky above, I fly away, better dig when I feel some love. You know we coming for it, oh, we gon' see the light. Until then, I'm just in the night, night. Until then, I'm just in the night. Until then, I'm just in the night. Until then, I'm just in the night, night. I close my eyes, so I can't see. I will collapse into this idiocracy. So I write, I'm thankful for what I've explored. Now we go down, down, down till we sink to the ocean floor. We run around, head to the ground. I conversate still I don't ever get a sound, but I try. What do you mean? Head to the screen, now we go down, down, down. I just can't take it no more. Until then, I'm just in the night. Until then, I'm just in the night. Until then, I'm just in the night, night.
I got diamond flow. Game major with a mind like a minor, no. Think deep like a minor, though. I'm a dinosaur, been around since the time before. I'm all in my zone. Cloud on my tongue, got a mind of its own. Donnie was out of his element. I was like, chill, Walter, just shut up and bowl. Yeah, vibe on a nice wave. Staying on point like a night blade. I'm sipping on something that feels like it might have a bit of the essence of nightshade. Hey, a flicker of light. Found what I needed and kept it in sight. You kept on looking behind you. I was in line to send it all into the... Kept on looking behind you. I was in line to send it all into the...
Until then, I'm just in the night. Until then, I'm just in the night. Until then, I'm just in the night, night. Until then, I'm just in the night. Until then, I'm just in the night. Until then, I'm just in the night, night.
April 20th, 1889.
Wirtschaftlich zu vernichten, dass dann Deutschland nicht mehr länger untätig zusehen könnte.
Adolf Hitler, dictator of Nazi Germany who ruled for more than a dozen years, is born in Austria. Hitler's Third Reich brought World War II and the Holocaust that killed 6 million Jews in Europe. 1999.
They didn't care who they shot at, they were just shooting. And then they throw a grenade or they threw something that blew up.
2 students go on a shooting rampage at Columbine High School in Littleton, Colorado. They kill a dozen classmates and a teacher inside the school before taking their own lives. 1980, the first Cubans sailing to the United States as part of the massive Mariel boat lift arrive in Florida. Over the next few months, more than 125,000 Cubans reached the U.S. by boat in the exodus from Fidel Castro's regime. 1939.
There's no question in my mind. This is the greatest game that has ever been invented.
Baseball Hall of Famer Ted Williams makes his major league debut with the Boston Red Sox. And 1951, soul singer Luther Vandross, whose romantic songs include Here and Now, is born in New York. Today in History, April 20th. Camille Bohannon, The Associated Press.
Welcome back in our studio, and in today's news,